Hi, welcome to China Now, your most authoritative news and current affairs talk show. My name is Stanley Kwabla Arku. Let's kickstart today's episode with latest news happening in China. On China Current with Chris, our host, will be in a conversation with Ghana's former ambassador to China and currently the president of Ghana-China Friendship Association, His Excellency Kojo Amu. They'll be discussing the early development of Ghana-China relations and the role Ghana's first president, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, played in consolidating the ties between both countries. Please stay.
Hello, welcome to this special episode brought to you by Wave Media. I'm Chris. Today I'm going to have an interesting conversation with an old friend of China's, a former Ghanaian ambassador to China and currently the president of Ghana-China Friendship Association, His Excellency Kojo Amu. So without further ado, let's get it started.
Your Excellency, I read from one webpage that you were in China in 1959 when
Sure.
you were part of the Western African Student Union.
That's correct. Yes.
Right. And also you came to China in 1961.
In 1961 was a very interesting thing happening. That was when our first president, President Kwame Nkrumah, came to the Treaty of Friendship was in that year. So I participated in it, but I was not part of the delegation of the President Kwame Nkrumah. I was on a different assignment. I was going to Vietnam to see Ho Chi Minh. And that's, so they said, why don't you stay with us for a bit too? And so it was a great event when Show and Live played table tennis with President Nkrumah.
So you were you witnessed those figures, those prominent figures in the global stage. That was so long ago, yet their name resonates till this day. We want to go back to the beginning, to when Ghana first became independent and when the nationalist movement and the leaders like Nkrumah became first president. How was Ghana like in those years? What was how did Ghana and China become friends with each other?
Yes, Ghana, I think Nkrumah was a good friend of China. But maybe if I go a little further, when the Red Army moved into China in 1949, I was just a young boy in boarding school. And that was a phenomenal experience for us to hear of this kind of the Red Army marching into China, Beijing in 1949. And it was also the same time when President Kwame Nkrumah did the positive action for which he was arrested in his campaign for Ghana's independence. So I find those things very significant for my own political upliftment and understanding.
Yeah.
It happened that for me, because my older brother was a personal assistant of Kwame Nkrumah, this was the basis on which, even though we may have been thought of as being a bourgeois family, which was a contradiction, in that.
Right. He was arrested by the colonial government. There was a lot of people protesting right in front of the prison, and he got elected in the prison. That was a miracle. And were you part of the protest movement?
Oh yeah, sure. As I say, my brother was also in prison.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay.
And when they came out, they established something which was quite unique. I think people don't talk too much about it. They were known as PG, mean prison graduates.
Okay. In China we call it 龙场悟道. Okay. Yeah, like you start. I mean, that's mental clarity. You start to think about the big things. When Ghana became a republic in 1960. So after that, it was a period of, relatively speaking, a period of honeymoon with both camps, with the capitalist camp and also the socialist camp. Everybody wants to, because it's the first African, sub-Saharan African nation to achieve sovereignty and independence. So everybody was a friend of Ghana's. And how did Ghana move forward and why Ghana became friends with the socialist camp with China?
Because I think Kwame Nkrumah realized the socialist countries supported us during our independence campaign. There was an element that here we are taking power, and these people have been supporting us all the way. And as I say, in 1961, in which they also established the Ghana-China Friendship Society, it tells you the story of how he felt. When we came to China in 1959, which was the anniversary that of the Red Army marching into Beijing, and they treated us very well, and we saw a lot of things. But also, some of the things I recollect is at that time, what China was, if they said somebody was rich, he owned a bicycle. That was the rich man. And that was quite fascinating for us to, see that, China as it was. That had a deep impression on me as someone growing up, that this is a country which we've heard of. And the factor, as I said before, is the march into Beijing, the Mao Zedong's Great March which came in, was a fascinating thing for all of us. And for me, it's lasted throughout my life, that this phenomenon inspires some of us to really become internationalists rather than even concentrating only on our own country. But of course, it helped us in the development of our struggle for independence, for our struggle for internationalism, and a whole other things, which will develop into something else later. The association which I was linked with was called the West African Students' Union. And the West African Students' Union has had very long period of struggle. And many of our political leaders, including Kwame Nkrumah, passed through this place. I think he was General Secretary of West African Students' Union. I became General Secretary of West African Students in 1959. And that was the reason why the Chinese invited us, and I had the opportunity as my first visit to China. What I saw of China then was, as I said, that somebody on a bicycle was seen as a rich man at that time. And for me to see from that level till much later what China had become, and for me also actually being ambassador in China, was for me interesting. Furthermore, because of working in the West African Students' Union as the General Secretary, I attended many conferences like the IUS conference, International Students' Union conference. And one of my great friends at that time representing China was Ho Chi Li. Ho Chi Li and I remained very good friends. So when I was in China, he was then a minister, and I used to see him. So that's the background of it. So when I came to China, 1961, as I mentioned, I was on my way to Vietnam to see Ho Chi Minh. That was a lot of other students also were going, and that's when I got to China. And Nkrumah, our first president, had come on his first visit. So they said, "Why don't you join us? Wait for us before you go on your assignment." So that's what I did, and experience a little bit more of how China was going to come up.
Wow. Okay. That was an interesting story. And also there was a very interesting episode in Ghana-China relation, the history. In 1964, Premier Zhou and I visited a number of African countries, and Ghana was one of them. And that was a very, how should I put it, special timing in Nkrumah's government, because it was a failed assassination attempt, and he was wounded, right? And Premier Zhou, some people suggested to Premier Zhou, let's just skip Ghana, and he insisted, no, we must show support. to our friend, so he went anyway. Were you there in Ghana?
Yeah, I was there in Ghana when Premature and Lai came to visit Ghana. Yeah.
How did the public, the Ghanaian public, react to that event? Was it a well-known event? I believe so. Right?
It was very well-known event. I met Premier Chuen Lai in 1961 when he played table tennis with Nkrumah in Beijing. And it was very well received visit. And it's 1966 that you had the coup d'etat.
Yeah. I'm also curious about your later experience. When did you become ambassador to China? From which year to which year?
I think now let me 1982.
In the 80s. Okay. So that was after about 20 odd years since you first came to China. So how China has changed during that 2 decades?
Oh, quite a lot. I remember visiting Shenyang, and it was a small fishing village. Now it's a replica of Hong Kong.
How would the local people see the Chinese? I mean, are they affected by all those negativity in Western press about so-called neocolonialism that China is committing in Africa? Were they affected?
From the ordinary person, I can't see any reaction that they know the Chinese and so on. It's like also the African being in China. I remember I had a young man, very interesting young boy, he went to China in his own regard. And then he learned Chinese from the markets. He didn't learn it from school, but he could speak Chinese. The Chinese were fascinated by him. So every time my friends would say, "Where's the young Ghanaian who was staying with you and spoke Chinese?" I'm sure that the Chinese will probably be able to learn the African language or the Ghanaian. So there are many African languages. Learn the Ghanaian language. It's not been some.
I see if I can learn some Arkan language if I go to Ghana.
Yeah. You can. The person will say, meet you and say, "What is saying?" That means, "How are you?"
Oh, okay. I thought you were speaking Chinese. It sounds similar. Yeah. Anyway, I think that's about all of today's interview. I mean, I really appreciate your time, sir. I mean, you woke up so early in the morning. Thank you, really. And I wish we can continue this kind of conversation in the future to foster the greater bond between two peoples.
I thank you also very much for having me and making this exchange, which I think will continue and be improved to see what the developments have been since we talked.
Yeah.
Maybe 10 years later, when I'm 100 years.
Look forward to that. Yes, definitely. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thanks a lot. And have a good day.
My salute.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Chris, for that insightful conversation. Now, this week's Overlap features a conversation between Li Camp from the US and Zifer, one of China's top current affairs commentators, who will provide insights into Trump's social media presence in China and also the different political systems in both China and the US.
Welcome to Overlap, brought to you by Breakthrough News and Wave Media. My name's Lee Camp. I'm the former host of the TV show Redacted Tonight and the current host of Dangerous Ideas and the most censored comedian in America. Overlap is a global conversation show with rotating hosts that is based on a simple concept. While U.S. elites are working to build a new Cold War with China, this show seeks to do the opposite and show how much we all have in common. So I'm excited to be joined by Zephyr, a content creator on YouTube and the popular Chinese social media site Bilibili. Welcome to the show, Zeph.
Thanks, Lee. Hello, audience in US.
Yes, it's exciting to do this. Another unique aspect of this show is that it kind of has no host, or it has two hosts. So we'll just go back and forth, chatting with each other about the topic at hand, which is the indictment of Trump and his allies, his co-conspirators. Former President Donald Trump is among the indicted, marking his fourth indictment. If he gets another one, I think he gets something free, free car or something. He and 18 others are charged under Georgia's Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organization Act, RICO, asserting that they worked together towards a common criminal goal. And for those of us here in the United States, when we hear RICO, we usually think of the mafia. That's usually what was used to charge many mafia members. The indictment outlines various attempts to reverse the election results, including spreading false claims of election fraud and submitting fake pro-Trump electors to Congress. So to get started, I'll throw a question to you, Zeph. How was the Trump presidency? How did it change China's views on America, or your average Chinese citizen's views of America?
Well, interesting question, because a lot of Chinese possibly they think Trump is the most interesting U.S. president throughout history. Frankly, the four indictment, possibly Georgia is the least interesting one. The most interesting, the FBI secret file one, right?
The hush money, the hush money for the prostitute was more interesting.
Oh well, possibly, but to Chinese audience, they're very shocked to learn that they put the secret, actually top secret U.S. national defense file next to bathtub or toilet or stage next to his bed. So everybody was like, what? And learning that actually from the Times, right? His fans visiting in Mar-a-Lago, and Trump was like, come on and see some top secret file. And people were
come check out what I got in my bathroom. Yeah.
Everything is appalling, right? But in a good way, it's entertaining for foreigners. So it's the first time people learn that a government, U.S. president actually hide top secret files in bathtub. You rarely see this, right? So it's interesting and entertaining.
Yeah, that's fascinating. You say this latest indictment is the least interesting, which I understand, but it's also, in my view, and a lot of legal scholars' view, the most significant, because the other ones, the top secret documents, I mean, the thing is, the U.S. marks everything top secret. So they later found documents in Biden's residence, documents in Pence's residence. So apparently this is quite common that these presidents and vice presidents don't know what they're doing and they're taking home classified documents. Now, Trump took it to a new level because he was actively trying to hide them, which is a different thing. But then the hush money for the prostitute or for the porn star or whatever you want to call her, it's fascinating to learn about, but most people believe it's not actually illegal. Like, you can pay someone not to talk. It's generally not considered illegal. So they had to do all kinds of legal gymnastics to make that illegal. So this latest one, though, seems to be actually legitimate, where he and several others worked very hard to put forward a competing group of electors. Now, the system in the U.S. is very complicated. The whole elector system is anti-democratic. I mean, it was put in place by the rich white guys who founded the United States so that they could make sure the American people didn't always get what they want. If the American people voted for something they didn't like, they could undo it. So the elector system is so complicated, but legally, it seems you cannot create a fake group of electors, say that they count as real, and then put forward documents saying they're real. And so this one actually seems more legit than the others. But I will also throw in here that something our media won't talk to Americans about, which is that our democratic process is rigged and corrupt throughout the process in many ways. The number one way being money. You can buy an election in the United States, and $16 billion was spent on the last midterm election to buy all of these elections. Money is important. Media is a huge factor of it. Trump gets loads of free media, which is why he got elected in the first place. So there's a lot of ways it's rigged. There's many others as well, gerrymandering and all this complicated stuff. But so yes, Trump did this, but I think people are ignoring the fact of how our elections are rigged throughout the election process, which to me kind of dilutes how evil this makes Trump. I mean, I find the man detestable, but you're right that a lot of this is pretty funny.
Well, to me, that a lot of fragmented issues are funny. For example, the Georgia case, right? The prosecutor sent how much? I think it's 11.5 million pages files to the Trump law team. Do you know that?
Yeah, I don't know the number. But
I think they possibly run through it ChatGPT or something, and I would assume they actually setting ChatGPT, oh, this is for some law stuff, and make it unreadable for other ChatGPT software. Just so when the Republicans, the Trump law team, trying to use ChatGPT, speed up their reading, and they couldn't do it, right?
Well, that's the other thing is our legal scholars, our lawyers will use all kinds of tricks like that. Another one they'll use is they'll keep pretending the trial is going to happen so that all the lawyers and everyone has to fly down to Georgia and they all show up and then they go, oh no, we're going to postpone it. And then they all have to fly back home. And it's a gimmick used to just tire people out. They spend tons of money. It's all ridiculous. But I wanted to ask you, do you think your average Chinese person viewed the elections in the United States as like fully legitimate and democratic before Donald Trump, and now they have questions?
Trump is in a way a very major phenomenon to make the paramount of U.S. as somewhat a symbol for democracy in the world less holy, in my mind. But if we look at the trend of history going the past 10 years, I can say Trump is not the big stuff right here. There's reason why people don't think U.S. is symbolizing whatever democracy or freedom, liberty anymore. So a lot of people hate Trump, think he broke the rule or whatever. But if you look at the trend, people just don't think U.S. is that free anymore.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That Trump kind of revealed something that was going on for a long time, and the U.S. has been coupping other governments, other nations, in a bunch of different ways, sometimes outright assassination, but sometimes economically or other ways for years and years. Trump, that didn't start or end during Donald Trump. So I think you're right that he kind of revealed something that's been going on a long time. In terms of corruption of officials, if an official is corrupt in China, are there methods to stop them from being a government official, and how good are those methods?
Well, I think most commonly it will be public reporting to somewhat committees, and they'll do a fully very strict and formal inquiry to find out whether he is corrupted or not. This is very common right now because a lot of these people got money, and due to the party principle, they cannot use their money to exchange foreign currencies. So go to US, go to Europe, go to casinos. So they have to use their money in China. At that time, when they use the money that much, his income or her income does not pair with their buying, then people will report to somewhat committees saying, this guy seems suspicious or she looks suspicious.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the income, because in the U.S., when officials get into the U.S. government, they suddenly become far richer. Someone was pointing out that Nancy Pelosi is worth like $100 million, but if you were to take the amount she makes from government, she would only have like $8 million over her entire career. So we've seen this again and again, that being a government official in the United States allows you access to stock information so that you can then basically do insider trading on Wall Street, whether it's always called that or not.
That's some public secret, but my audience are shocking to learn that Nancy Pelosi's husband got DUI, right, and rode in a car crash and showed a permanent whatever police friendship card right? This kind of stuff is very popular on Twitter. I checked like for 1,200 something posting, they have inferior or superior friendship card than their friends. It's some whatever, I don't know, like a party showmaker, showcase. I have a superior friendship card with some policeman or higher ranked policeman in the neighborhood, right? And Adams, the New York mayor, friend is saying to a senior officer that someone showing a friendship card with him, you must let him pass, right? The DUI, whatever, I don't care. And the guy was like, there is this thing called integrity, right? He went on New York Times to say there is this thing called integrity. Not because he's that much of integrity, but in the weekend, say neighborhood, everybody got a friendship card. All kinds of friendship card with this policeman, with that policewoman. Just those superior got the captain saying, you must let them pass. And the guy was like, no, one day he was not in best temper or whatever. No, I'm not letting him pass. And the captain was like, okay, you're moving to the night patrol. Like police VIP, right?
I hadn't heard of the friendship cards, but I know that a lot of people that are part of the police fraternity or connected to it, they'll put the stickers on the back of their cars and that type of thing. And then police generally won't pull over someone with the police fraternity sticker on their car and things like that. So there's a lot of favoritism. Absolutely. Do you think people in China think that Trump will end up in prison or that he could win the presidency again? Or
so I look into all these four cases deeply. And I do shows, explanatory shows to my audience explaining why he can still get elected and even in prison, right? When CPUSA, actually not CPUSA, but the Social Party of America, right, got elected in prison. And that time my audience was like, okay, so this guy can still get elected in prison. And people in China or in the majority in the world countries, jail or other facilities is somewhat judicial and very formal, right? But they're very shocking to learn that in US, some prisons are listed companies. And government would go to some prison like, oh, we're hosting less prisoners, inmates than before. We need more prisoners.
yeah, corporate.
California government, right? $1 per hour and you go fire extinguishing out there. So it's, yeah, that's somewhere very shocking to learn.
Yeah, there definitely are different types of prisons in the U.S. You're talking about the for-profit prisons where the states are obligated to have a certain number of people in prison and by the contract. But also there can be favoritism in terms of prison sentences. One of the best examples is Jeffrey Epstein that everyone now knows about. When he was first convicted of pedophilia or whatever the charge actually was, they ultimately sentenced him to like a year or something, but he was allowed to leave prison to go to his office. So he was showing up for prison for a few hours, then going to go to work and then coming. Like, it's just ridiculous. So in the United States, you can run for office even if you've been convicted. Some states, they're saying some states may try and pass something to stop him from getting on the ballot if he has been convicted. But constitutionally, it seems, and legal scholars debate on some of this, but it seems there's nothing that could stop that would necessarily stop him from being elected president in prison or from prison. So, or even while his trial's going on or something like that. So it's a big question mark as to, even if this goes through, as to whether it would stop Trump from winning.
Well, the important problem here is I went through several articles from Harvard University professors talking on WAPO, arguing whether it's possible the Georgia, because it's state felony, right? Let's say Trump got sentenced to the Georgia state prison and stayed in prison, he got elected. Is it possible that those foreign leaders go to that prison and meet Trump? Or is it possible, like Epstein, he can make his home like a prison, right? And so how about make White House a prison and make all the USSS, right, the security services, in the prison, and there's the state police, whatever, looking at him signing whatever files, medals, make a press conference or in the cell, right? Just make a big cell. Think about that. What kind of freak show is that?
Will he be allowed to have the classified documents in his prison cell? Do Chinese people think there's like a huge difference between the way Joe Biden leads the United States versus Donald Trump, or do they feel a lot of it is fairly similar, except Trump maybe is funnier?
So we actually went through article by article how much Trump was making sure to hurt China, those sanctions and stuff. A question raised is if Joe Biden was elected, before he was elected, right? Well, he actually withdraw those stupid sanctions, like 45, 75, what a punishable sanctions. My conclusion was very clear. He would not withdraw anything. And since Joe Biden got elected, actually the truth went out. He didn't withdraw anything. So to me, it seems like, okay, before Joe Biden got elected, every Democratic Party was like, oh, Trump is out of his mind, he's sanctioning, he's stupid, whatever, drinking bleach. But when Joe Biden got in office, he didn't withdraw anything. So what's the difference between you and Trump? You're yelling Trump is stupidly anti-China, but you're doing the same thing, right? You didn't withdraw anything. Orally, okay, you're being nice with China, more wise, more sanity. But actually, on hand, I don't see any stuff, right?
No, I think you're absolutely right. And it's a lot of Americans, though, they believe the words. So they think that Joe Biden is being more rational or more logical with China, but it's the same stuff. It's the same Cold War against China. It's the same economic war. And it was Nancy Pelosi that flew to Taiwan just to try and make things even more heated. So it's the idea that Trump is worse for China. They're both horrible in terms of having diplomacy and friendship and working together, which is what this world desperately needs. And it's just that the Democrats, say nicer things.
Frankly, I don't think the Democrat Party is representing democracy in any ways in the U.S., frankly. Because those like AOC or Bernie Sanders, they talk about a little bit about socialism and they got really stomped in the U.S. Nobody was caring what they're saying, like Ilhan Omar. Nobody cared what they say and everybody's isolating them, saying they're freaks and stuff. They're not even that socialist. They're not even that socialism, right? They're just raising this term and got demonized, like you're communist. They don't even know the difference between communism and socialism. Like, what freak is that? That's true, like Trump telling people to drink bleach. Everybody's mocking Trump. But why you're not mocking the Democratic Party? They don't even know the difference between communism and socialism, right? Stupid.
Yeah, and it's by design. They want people confused because they don't want people to actually know what these things are and what they stand for. But Bernie Sanders was hugely popular before they, again, anti-democratically rigged the primaries against Bernie Sanders. They did everything they could, from, confusing people about polling locations. The computers had a lot of question marks around them, changing the ballots, telling everyone in California to fill out what's called a provisional ballot, which is kind of like a fake ballot. So they did everything they could to rig the primaries against Bernie, and ultimately they stopped him. But they were very nervous.
I think they suppressed the report on Bernie Sanders, frankly, because you see Bernie is telling the truth about everything, and he had to go to Guardian. Not any U.S. media, he had to go to a Guardian. So possibly U.S. mainstream media, CNN or whatever, that some Chinese, they worship CNN a lot 10 years ago. Not anymore now, because of Trump. Trump is yelling CNN fake news every day. So right now, CNN in China, everybody says CNN, even the, I don't know, like farmers in rural areas, it's CNN, oh, fake news. I know that, fake news, never believe, right? He made some contribution, at least exposing CNN or BBC as fake news. That's a good thing, right? We need to recognize that as a good side. But I think the mainstream media is basically just wasting huge amount of tremendous public attention, just circulating useless information all day long about something doesn't matter, and to audience that don't care at all. For example, the Florida building collapse, right? That case, and everybody is reporting how they rescue a small kitten, and how the kitten is clean, how the kitten was meowing and everything, lovely, adorable, but nobody cares. The rescue team didn't rescue even a single human being, and everybody's like, oh, we rescued a cat, hooray. And this time the Hawaii, Maui fire, everybody's like, I rescued the other pets, how we help the pets. What about those human beings? What are you guys doing, right? It's circulating all day how to help pets. What about the men? We care the men and women living there. What about rebuilding? Joe Biden was like, oh, Zelensky, do you need more money?
Yeah.
This freak show, I don't get it. The grand circus. That's how we view everything going on right now, okay?
Well, you're not wrong. The United States sends hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine for a proxy war with Russia, and meanwhile, we can't take care of our own citizens. We can't help people in Maui. We can't fix the bridges that are collapsing across the United States. We can't do anything for average citizens. 64%, I think, of Americans say they live paycheck to paycheck, never sure where their next paycheck is going to come from. And meanwhile, we're sending hundreds of billions to Zelensky in Ukraine. So, yeah, you're absolutely right.
That's true, and it's the trending comparing to 50 years ago. A lot of U.S. citizens, when they're doing the polls, say they don't think in the future they can get this much income compared to 50 years ago. And for their children, they think the future will be worth. So American dream, possibly that's why a lot of, legal or illegal immigrants, they went to America for. But now, since even the American, they don't think they have a future in America. So that's possibly one reason why they think Trump is something they need. And make America great again and stuff. If they think America was ever great in whatever historical area, yeah.
To go back to the main topic here for a moment, Donald Trump, do you think that the Republicans, the other Republicans that are running, are they going to, and Republicans, I guess, across America, are they going to back Donald Trump considering the multiple indictments of everything? And does it matter in your view?
Man, that's a good question. That's a splendid question I want to ask you. I went through a lot of articles talking who else can people elect? Ron DeSantis? Or in Trump's way, Ron DeSanctimonious. He only got like 10 or whatever 15% support. He himself think he represents conservative, but banning abortion is not conservative. It's anti-human, right? If you're not electing Trump, how about Ron DeSantis? In a way, I think Ron DeSantis, those slavery makes some slave good, right? This argument and not allowing any sexual teaching before primary school 3rd grade is anti-human in my point. So if you're not electing Trump, are you guys actually gonna elect Ron DeSantis? If in CNN opinion they anti-Trump this much, possibly they want people to elect Ron DeSantis. So my explanation is possible they think Ron DeSantis cannot win the campaign against Joe Biden. So they want Ron DeSantis to win the primary against Trump, and Joe Biden can easily beat Ron DeSantis when final campaign comes. In that way, possibly, I think other Republicans will support Trump anyways. Because if it's Trump, there's still hope. If it's Ron DeSantis, people in Seattle, people in, Nebraska, in Maine, they possibly don't even know who Ron DeSantis is. There is a guy went on WAPO saying like, okay, I'm not a Trump fan, I'm not MAGA, whatever. I vote for Trump just because I know the guy. Other guy's Mike Pence. Who even know who Mike Pence did? His vice presidency, without if you know he's from Indiana, he was a state governor, right? So if you're not voting for Trump, who else, the Republican, the conservatives, will vote? That's the real question. So I'm interested, and my audience are interested, if not voting for Trump, who will the conservatives vote if consider Ron DeSantis too conservative?
Yeah, some people are talking about DeSantis. I guess the only other one you hear much about recently is Ramaswamy, but I don't know that much about him. But these people all seem like monsters to me. they're all a horror show. But a lot of it is this kind of culture war crap where it's like, we don't like the gender sign on the bathroom. It's just like meaningless, dumb stuff that they can bicker over, and they act like that's everything. when in fact they should be talking much more about the larger issues of the world. But, I guess there's a chance that DeSantis, by the way, DeSantis also oversaw U.S. torture at, I think, Guantanamo as a lawyer in the Army. So this is, he's a horror show, but he's not nearly as entertaining as Donald Trump. Donald Trump's a far better entertainer.
Well, his new opinion is very entertaining, saying the U.S. should send troops to Mexico and exterminate the drug mafia and stuff. You want to start a war with Mexico or whatever? That's out of the mind. It's not even like right or left. This guy was a lawyer even. Like, how did you get your degree? Like Mall University, you just pay the money and get a degree. Nobody get like, dude, come on, right?
I think each one of them is looking for the most insane position to take so that people will talk about them, so
to win some media report, I guess.
Yeah, it's the Kanye West strategy. If you seem insane enough, people will talk about you. But one thing you mentioned, though, is that the Democrats or the Democratic Party might be kind of pushing for DeSantis because they think that Biden can beat DeSantis. I don't know what Biden can do. I mean, he can barely speak. He can barely walk. So I don't know, like you put him in a debate, they'll be lucky if he faces the right direction. So getting him to actually speak full sentences, I think, would be very difficult. And I don't know what the Democratic Party's plan is. I mean, some people believe they're going to switch out Joe Biden and put in Gavin Newsom or something later in the campaign season. But I don't actually know. I know they're scared to death of RFK Jr., who some things he says I like, some things he says he's out of his mind. But it's all pure insanity. It's a circus. You're right. It's a circus.
From what I learned, Harvard poll last month, 70% don't like Biden and 65% they don't like Trump. So basically, they don't like either Trump or Biden. But there's no third choice. That's why possibly Andrew Yang, they get a forward party, I guess. And I think the majority, the middle section, they'll possibly vote for the forward party. But that's not, in a way, realistic. Yeah. So that's what I see. I conclude that is the well-educated middle class, they elevated to the higher class and they deny or disregard those people living middle class and sweaty mass.
Well, and something your audience may be interested in is the part of the reason there's no well-known third party in the United States is because they do exist. It's just made incredibly difficult for them to get on ballots and to get any media coverage. Cornel West is a very well-known professor who's running for the Green Party, a third party, but getting media coverage is nearly impossible. But beyond that, just getting on the ballot in each state is incredibly difficult. You need tens of thousands of signatures. You need to spend all this money that a lot of third parties don't have. So the American system is designed to make it nearly impossible for third parties to get any traction. And that really is by design.
So what I learned from CNN is their viewing rate actually dropped 50%, their target audience, after Trump left the office. So to me, it seems like CNN is whatever vampire sucking blood from all kinds of MAGA ideology and reporting on Trump. So in a way, they're enemy, but business-wise, possibly they're partners. Just in the primary on Fox, right? The same.
That is an excellent point, and I've made that point before, where CNN and MSNBC and many of the U.S. news networks act like Trump is the devil, and Trump's a detestable human being. But at the same time, they're the ones that actually get Trump elected, because they gave, in the last election, the one he won, they gave him 10 times as much coverage as Hillary Clinton and 16 times as much coverage as Bernie Sanders when Bernie was still in the race. So they give Trump all of this media coverage, just insane amounts of media coverage. And then they go, how did he get elected? How did this happen? All we did was talk about him every minute. So they have themselves to blame, even as they run around and blame people like me and censor me and delete my YouTube channel and stuff like that. They really have themselves to blame if they're upset that Donald Trump got elected.
And it's still going on. Like yesterday or the day before, he went back to the X, right, Twitter, and posted his criminal photo on Twitter and got like whatever 250 million views on Twitter. And Elon Musk was like, wow, next level. And everybody reporting, WAPO and WSJ be like, oh, there's a phenomenon. And this guy's still sucking his blood, right? Still media coverage for Trump. And nobody's care about Joe Biden. Joe Biden sent a whatever campaign post with like 5 million views comparing to Trump like 250 million. So when they are arguing, demonizing Trump or MAGA, actually they're helping him to build bigger and earn more money. In 2 days, he got like 7 millions, comparing to what DeSantis got in hand, only like 12 million. So Trump actually made 70% DeSantis election money in just 2 days. Think about that.
Also, Trump sells NFTs where he's dressed in a superhero outfit. So
I'm the MAGA king, right? Actually, in China, my audience and a lot of netizens, they have this called Trump Huang, which means Trump the king. He himself said, I'm the king, right? MAGA king. And the other says, baby Trump, because everybody think he's heard by a Democratic Party, by CNN and stuff. He is kind of hero fighting CNN, exposing how CNN is fake news to the world. Not only Chinese, I met a lot of Indian friends. They really worship CNN as whatever paramount of the media, and they want to learn from CNN, BBC. And after Trump presidency, everybody's like, "Oh, forget about that."
That's great. You know, I think that's a real positive. Maybe that's the only positive of Donald Trump. So, did he make people in China kind of more supportive of Chinese foreign policy and nationalism? Did Trump have that impact?
So I think attention doesn't necessarily mean support. I think a lot of Chinese audience, they learned more about international affairs, how the state is run after Trump presidency, especially after learning about foreign indictment. Before that, people were like, oh, managing the government, how my daily routine is helping the country to be a better place. Everybody was like, okay, some big figures problem is not my problem. But seeing Trump is stirring everything up in the US, and people were like, okay, it's my duty to do something for my country. Everybody make together, probably make our country a better place. So in a way, Trump did make a lot of Chinese audience more patriotic in a good way. The other way, possibly they got more hatred from Trump presidency because they think reporting what the freak show in US, like telling people to drink bleach, is somewhat damaging their perfect fake US homeland fantasy that they have. But possibly these people never been to US and they just fantasize US as somewhat democracy heaven, that everybody got honey and milk everywhere, you know. So reporting anything bad in US is, damaging their perfect wet dream.
Well, so to sum all of this up, the US may be a mess, but our leaders are more entertaining than Chinese leaders, so we're funnier. So it looks like we're out of time, but Zeph, it's been a pleasure to chat with you. Thank you for doing this with me.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you, guys.
That's all for the show today. I hope you enjoyed this edition. As always, please do send your comments, thoughts, feedback, and suggestions for the upcoming episodes of the show through the email provided below. My name is Stanley Kwabla Arku. See you same time next week.